Hello BookTube. Today I want to talk about the 12 volumes of manga that I pre-ordered in October, as well as Dur-An-Ki by Kentaro Miura. What I do is every month I put in a pre-order for the following month's forthcoming volumes of manga in the series that I actively follow, as well as debut volumes of series that I would like to try. Normally, I put in these pre-orders with Book People, the great bookstore in Austin, Texas. But given that Dur-An-Ki is published by Dark Horse, I ended up forgetting about it when I made my September order. So I ordered Dur-An-Ki from Powell's, the great bookstore in Portland, Oregon. So I'm going to talk about the volumes of manga that I picked up in the order in which I read them, with Dur-An-Ki coming in last. So let's start with the two final volumes. First up is My Hero Academia, Volume 42 by Kohei Horikoshi. My Hero Academia is inspired by American superhero comics. It's about a young man named Izuku Midoriya who loves superheroes. In a world in which 80% of the human population has a superpower called a quirk, Izuku is one of the 20% of humanity who are born completely mundane. They are quirkless. However, at the beginning of the series, an act of bravery on Izuku's part inspires the greatest hero of Japan, All Might, to take him on as an apprentice. And after grueling training, grants Izuku his quirk, One for All, which can be passed on from user to user. And if that user themselves already has a quirk, that quirk will be added into the greater One for All. Izuku, with this new quirk, is able to join UA, the premier high school for aspiring superheroes in Japan, alongside his high school friend and bully, Bakugo. Izuku takes on the superhero named Deku, and he and Bakugo and their classmates in Class 1A begin to learn what it means to be a superhero and how to go about being a superhero. However, at this time, the world that All Might and his fellow heroes have built is coming under increasing threat by a new generation of villains led by Shigaraki, the leader of the League of Villains. And eventually, this conflict leads into a massive war that devastates Japan and serves as the final arc of My Hero Academia. This final volume, 42, first chapter wraps up the final fight between Izuku and Shigaraki, and the following chapters focus on picking up the pieces of figuring out where things are going now. Because while the villains have been defeated physically, their ideas have not been. And it's up to this new generation of heroes to figure out where things are going from here. To make sure that the war is won ideologically as well as physically. The final chapters in this volume it's an extended epilogue, looking at where the characters are years later. And I really love where they all end up. And I love the final chapter. It is just really amazing. And I loved this volume a lot. It was really good. Although I was surprised that much of this volume is devoted to the epilogue rather than the epilogue being just a final chapter. But I will be doing a massive reread of My Hero Academia in 2026, so look forward to that. The other final volume that came out in October that I picked up is Twin Star Exorcists, Volume 35 by Yoshiaki Sukeno. So Twin Star Exorcists is about two prodigy exorcists, Rokuro and Benyo. They are fated to marry and produce an even more super baby exorcist who will end a 1,000-year war between the exorcists and an artificial race of humans called Kigare that live in an alternate dimension called Magano, who feed off of yin energy and also normal humans. At the beginning of the series, Rokuro wants nothing to do with being an exorcist. He suffered a traumatic event years before the series began that drove him away from wanting to be an exorcist. However, with the arrival of Benyo, he is informed that they are both twin star exorcists and have to marry. And so gradually over the course of the series, Rokuro regains his desire to be an exorcist to help people, and he and Benyo gradually fall in love in an awesome slow burn romance. This volume sees the culmination of their efforts to not only save their child from having to take on the burden of saving the world, but also coming to terms with the fact that neither the exorcist nor the Kigare are completely in the right, and how to bridge the gaps between the two, and how to properly deal with the king of the Kigare. And it is just wonderful. Much of this volume is devoted to Rokuro and Benyo figuring out what the king of Kigare is and how to stop her. And the final chapter is just wonderful, particularly the final scenes. It's just, I was a blubbering mess when I finished this book. It was so good. Seriously contemplating doing a reread of Twin Star Exorcists in 2026 as well, even though I did read the entire series in 2025, just not in one go. So, moving on to ongoing series. Next up is Astro Royale, Volume 2 by Ken Wakui. So, Astro Royale is about a young man who is the son of a Yakuza boss, and he admires Yakuza. He is very much an old school style Yakuza compared to his father, who modernized the group. At the beginning of the story, his father dies, and there's some controversy over whether he, the lone biological child of the boss, or his many adopted siblings, will take up leadership. At this point, a asteroid hits Earth and grants a number of people in at least Tokyo superpowers tied to important objects. Hibari is put into a coma, and when he wakes up, he develops the ability to he has a super punch that is tied to a bullet. And so Hibari has to bring his family together as his family begins to splinter into factions to fight over what is left of Tokyo. This volume sees Hibari doing some rather humorous missions. There's a band of thieves that have taken over a mansion and made it look haunted. There's a chapter where Hibari and his adoptive brother Tarasu have an Iron Chef battle. But the final chapters of this volume is devoted to dealing with the beginnings of a conflict between Hibari and his oldest adoptive brother, Shion, who is hunting people with these superpowers called Astros. And the final chapter shows just how despicable a guy he is. So I'm going to show you some pictures from here. I'm not going to show you pictures from My Hero Academia or Twin Star Exorcist because pretty much that's all spoilers. But when I do the rereads of them, I will show more pictures. Or at least I hope I will. Oh yeah, so I'm really enjoying Astro Royale. A bit bummed out that it only lasted 6 volumes. Okay, next up is DanDaDan Volume 15 by Yukinobu Tatsu. So DanDaDan is a weird series set in contemporary Japan. It's about 2 young people, Momo and Ken, who goes by the nickname Okuran. So at the beginning of the series, Momo believes in the supernatural, but not the extraterrestrial. And Ken believes in the extraterrestrial, but not the supernatural. So they make a bet. Momo will go to a location that is visited by aliens, and Ken will go to a location that is haunted. And they discover that in this world, the supernatural and the extraterrestrial exist side by side. And both Ken and Momo's encounters with the extraordinary unlocks within them super abilities. Momo's latent psychic abilities are awakened, and Ken is, for much of the series, possessed and then inherits the powers of a malevolent spirit called Turbo Granny. So this volume begins a new arc. The invasion of the space globalists of Earth has been defeated, and now the quest is on to try to find the remaining family jewel of Okuran. Basically, the reason why he has Turbo Granny's powers is because she stole his family jewels. And basically, he has her powers until they're all restored to him. And he's missing one still. So, this volume begins a new arc where they're trying to find this final missing family jewel. And over the course of this volume, they have to deal with the haunting crisis of the class representative, who is being haunted by the ghost of a friend of hers from childhood who wanted to be an idol alongside her. And this failure of this dream has led to the haunting. And so much of this volume is devoted to trying to exorcise the spirit. And eventually, the spirit transforms into a more benign companion. So it was a lot of fun. And also during this arc, the group becomes more closely tied in school as a club to deal with the supernatural. So that is our new mysterious teacher, who is possibly up to no good. That's their new club building. I love the artwork of DanDaDan. It's wonderful. Okay, moving on to Four Knights of the Apocalypse, Volume 19 by Nakaba Suzuki. This is a sequel series to The Seven Deadly Sins. It is inspired by the Arthurian mythos. In Four Knights of the Apocalypse, four superpowered teenagers are foretold to bring about the downfall of a corrupted King Arthur and his version of Camelot. In this volume, the four knights are beginning to reform after a 2-year breakup. So in this volume, Percival and his companions, Nascens, Anne, and Donnie, have found one of the other Four Knights of the Apocalypse, Gawain. And so she's rejoined the group, and they're going to a special prison in Camelot called Anwithin that holds a tournament every year that offers the chance of escape. And at Anwithin, they find that another member of the Four Knights, Tristan, has been imprisoned, as well as his two surviving companions, Shion and Isolde. And so much of this this volume is devoted to the beginning of a tournament arc, which Suzuki is quite fond of. So the arc begins with a preliminary battle that sees the cast of contestants whittled down to 16, which includes all of the current Knights of the Apocalypse as well as their companions, plus Donnie, plus Hauser, the commander of the Holy Knights of Britannia, and one of his apprentices, as well as a few new characters, Gareth and Burst, as well as Diodora, the son of Ironside, who is one of the major antagonists of the series, and Percival's adoptive brother. In fact, Percival was intended to be the host body of Diodora, because Diodora was born incredibly sickly. And Ironside decided that the only way to save his son was to have him possessed by, or for him to possess a healthier body, which ended up being Percival. So that's Tristan thinking he's somebody else. And that's a cool ship. So I'm going to show you. So that's the tournament battlegrounds. So I really enjoyed this volume. The mass brawl is really, really something else. And the seeing how things are going to turn out, it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's show you how the tournament's going to work out. So at the end of this volume, the first match between Percival and Gareth begins. And Gareth is a little turd of a teenager, but maybe he will grow out of it after getting his butt kicked by Percival. So next is Dur-An-Ki Hanako-kun, Volume 23 by AidaIro. So, Dur-An-Ki Hanako-kun is set in contemporary Japan. It's set at a very haunted school. One day, Nene is told that if she goes to a specific toilet stall, performs a set ritual, she can summon the spirit called the Dur-An Hanako-san and be granted a wish. Nene does so, and instead of the traditional form of the spirit, what represents the Hanako-san at the school is the ghost of a young boy, a Mane, who is the seventh of 7 mysteries at the school that regulate the relationships between the living and the supernatural. And so Nene makes a wish. It goes poorly. Amane rescues her from that and forces her to become his assistant. Eventually, Nene joins Amane in him performing his duties regulating the relations between the living and the dead. Also joining them is a young trainee exorcist named Ko, and together they go on a number of ventures at the school. At the school, there is the broadcast club is up to no good. They are changing the rumors, the stories told about many of the supernaturals, making them more malevolent, more dangerous. And this forces Amane to remove the other 6 mysteries from their positions. And the ghost behind this is the ghost of Amane's twin brother, Tsukasa, who is an evil little shit. So this volume deals with the timekeepers, the representatives of the first seed, trying to change things up to prevent the chaos that's going at the school from continuing. So they went into the past and changed history, creating a new timeline. And the only ones who know of this change is the mortal member of this timekeeper. So the past representative and the future representative are fully supernatural. But the present representative is a student at the school who is temporarily granted magical abilities while they are at the school. And the current representative is a classmate of Nene's named Akane. Also, Nene is aware of the changes, and so is Teru, Ku's older brother, who is a much more accomplished young exorcist. And so the 3 have to figure out what's going on, what the changes are, and whether or not they should change history back to the way it should be. And so much of this volume is devoted to this new world and the cast trying to figure out what's going on. And it's really interesting. Even if this new world seems to be a lot more dangerous than the old one. So I love their artwork. This was just a blast to read. Next is Mission Yozakura Family Volume 19 by Hitsuji Gondaira. So Mission Yozakura Family is about a young man named Taiyo, whose parents died before the series began. He was brought out of his depression by his best friend Matsumi, who is the head of the Yozakura family, a family of super spies. In each generation of Yozakura, one member of the family is born completely mundane, and that individual is the head of the family and is responsible for bearing the next generation of Yozakura, while the other superpowered members are dedicated to protecting her and fulfilling various missions. Matsumi's oldest brother, Kyoichiro, is obsessed with her, and so he threatens to kill Taiyo at the beginning of the series. And the only way to prevent him from doing so is for him to marry Matsumi and become the patriarch of the next generation of Yozakura. So this volume looks at the aftermath of the family dealing with their father, Momo, who was believed to have been killed before the series began, but is seemingly working with enemies of the Yozakura. So this volume looks at what's going on, who the ultimate enemy of the family is, and how to deal with it. And at the end, they are they receive an information from Momo on how to train to prepare for their ultimate enemies coming. So it's really, really fun. And there's a lot of really fun side stories as well. Gondaira is really good at balancing the more serious chapters with funner chapters. Like this for a wedding anniversary present. Okay. So, moving on to Gachiakuta Volume 8 by Kei Urana. So, Gachiakuta is about a young man named Rudo who lived in an artificial environment called the Sphere. He is convicted of a crime that he did not commit and is exiled to the surface. There, he discovers that it is populated and is attacked by a monster made of trash. He is saved by a young man named Injin, who is a giver. He has the ability to imbue an object of great importance to him with magical abilities that he can use in combat. Rudo himself is a giver, and he joins the Cleaners, Injin's organization, on the promise that the Cleaners will help him find a way to get back to the Sphere so that he can wreak bloody vengeance. Because Rudo is a very, very angry young man. This volume sees Rudo and his friends in the Cleaners captured by raiders, who are givers who are more malevolent. And the leader of the raiders has a proposition for Rudo to attack the Sphere together. And while this is going on, his subordinates are fighting Rudo's friends. And so this volume is devoted to a number of fights between Cleaners and raiders. And what I really liked about this is the character exploration it gives to Zenka, as well as Rio. There's a really interesting look at Rio in this volume. So, yeah. And I really love the artwork. It is just, I love the artwork. And I'm really loving this series. It is a ton of fun. Just a ton of fun. Okay, moving on to Record of Ragnarok, Volume 16 by Azychika, Shinya Umemura, and Takumi Fukui. So, Record of Ragnarok is about a competition between humans and gods. Every 1,000 years, the gods come together to decide whether humanity deserves to live for another 1,000 years. At the latest meeting of the gods, they decide that, no, it's time for humanity to be wiped out. The Valkyrie Brunhilde objects and invokes Ragnarok, a chance for humanity to survive by selecting 13 champions who will face off against 13 gods, and the winner of the majority matches will determine whether humanity survives or is exterminated. This volume continues the fight between Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, who is a champion of humanity, and Hades, champion of the gods. And this volume concludes that fight and begins the next round. And I love the artwork in this. Although, to be perfectly honest, as I've mentioned a few times when I've talked about Record of Ragnarok, I'm not on the side of the humans in this. I'm actually very much kind of rooting for the gods, because not all of the gods are jerks. I mean, particularly Hades. I mean, some of the gods are pretty jerky, but many of the gods are not jerks. And many of the humans are really jerks. So, particularly given the fact that one of the champions of humanity is Jack the Ripper. So, but I'm really enjoying Record of Ragnarok. So, next up is The Summer Hikaru Died, Volume 6 by Mokuren. So, The Summer Hikaru Died is a horror story starring Yoshiaki, a young man who lives in a very rural part of Japan. The summer before the series begins, his best friend and crush Hikaru disappeared for a week. And when Hikaru was found, it was not Hikaru. It was Hikaru's body, but something else, something eldritch, replaced him. And at the beginning of the series, Hikaru confronts Yoshiaki with this fact. And what follows is a weird horror story where Yoshiaki has to come to terms with the death of his friend, trying to help this new Hikaru figure out humanity, as well as figure out what exactly Hikaru is, and also dealing with various other supernatural incidents that are increasing in number in this part of Japan. I am really loving this series. It is really, really brilliantly done. The artwork, the characterizations, the horror, it is really, really brilliantly done. So yeah, really, really loving The Summer Hikaru Died. So next are the two number one volumes and Dur-An-Ki. So first up is Phantom Busters, Volume 1 by Neo-Shoko. So Phantom Busters is about a group of young men who form a supernatural-oriented research club. Eugene is a very scientific-minded young man. He is brilliant. Probably too brilliant for the high school that he chose. On the first day of high school, as he's walking to school, he encounters a young man named Mogari, who is shouting to the sea. And it seems like Mogari is going to drown when Eugene rescues him. And this begins something of a friendship that is very rocky initially, because Mogari does believe in the supernatural. In fact, he is an exorcist. And at the end of the first chapter, they kind of work out their differences and become friends, as Mogari spends all night trying to find a lost charm that Eugene's grandmother gave him. And they are attacked by a samurai ghost. And they are aided by another young man who has psychic abilities named Kei Urana. And so in the second chapter, they get him to join the club, as he wants to join the basketball team because he is a fan of Slam Dunk. Kei Urana is a manga nerd. And then the fourth member of the group is a classmate of Kei Urana named Kotaro, who can talk to spirits, but he can't see them. And he can talk them into passing on. And so Mugari, Eugene, and Kaoru need a fourth member for the club to become official. And they would like a psychic to round out the group. And so they eventually recruit Kotaro when he is seduced by a malevolent spirit. And so he becomes the fourth, although with the understanding that they will try to talk to the spirits first before allowing Mugari to exorcise them. And Mugari's method of exorcising ghosts is by eating them. And I really loved this volume. It was a ton of fun. I'm really looking forward to more Phantom Busters. And seeing how the relationship between the four boys grow. Oh, should show you some pictures first, huh? So let's show the... So yeah, this was a ton of fun. So next is Kamudo Volume 1 by Akira Himakawa. So Akira Himakawa is famous for their adaptations of The Legends of Zelda to manga. So Kamudo is set in a world in which the population are demi-humans. Basically, they're humans with heavy animal traits, and the world is ruled by dragon people. One day, a young boy named Kamuna is born, and he is almost fully human. The only dragon aspects to him are his arm and a vestigial tail. And so this is his tail. And I really enjoyed it. It was very, very interesting. I really enjoyed the artwork. And rather looking forward to seeing where the story progresses. Although I'm not entirely sure when the next volume does come out. No. And finally, Dur-An-Ki by Kentaro Miura, although mostly worked on by his group studio Gaga. So Dur-An-Ki is about a hermaphrodite named Usumgul, who is the creation of two gods. Usumgul is adopted by Utnapishtim and his wife on Mount Nisir. And so this world is very mythologically heavy. There are, of course, Mesopotamian deities. Utnapishtim is the Sumerian or Akkadian version of Noah. And around Mount Nisir live a hidden tribe of Hurrians, many of whose elite sons become friends of Usumgul's. Also joining Usumgul is Pan, the Greek god of the wilderness. And many of the Greek gods are mentioned in this volume, as well as the fact that Hermes delivers Usumgul to Utnapishtim and his wife. So the first part of this book is the 6 chapters of Dur-An-Ki. And the final part is some scripts for an earlier version of what would become Dur-An-Ki called Amazones, in which the character who would become Uzumgal is an androgynous young man from Japan who is sent into the Trojan War era and joins the Amazons as they fight in the Trojan War, and there are all sorts of encounters with various Greek mythological figures as well as the Greek gods. So this was a really, really fun volume. I really enjoyed it. At the end, I deeply wish there were more to this, but unfortunately, as the series was coming out, Kentaro Miura died, and the publisher of Dur-An-Ki decided to not continue on with the series. So this is all there is to Dur-An-Ki, and why there's a supplemental material about Amazones, which I want to show you some as well. So here's a sketch of Achilles. And here are some sketches of the gods when they would have made their appearances. So this was quite good as well. So I think this was a very, very successful weekend of manga that I just had. And sorry that I went so long in it. Did not anticipate this length. So anyway, BookTube, I highly recommend all of them. So look forward to the next time I do this with November's releases next Monday. So until I see you next time, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.